So a year ago, we started 2021, oh, so optimistic that the pandemic was going to be in the rearview mirror, all's going to be good. So how have our political leaders handled this year of transition? Marianne, let's start with Governor Baker.
You know, unencumbered from re-election, you would think this is Charlie Baker unplugged. But oh no. The Charlie Baker we've seen throughout this pandemic is still the Charlie Baker, leading from behind, lagging on everything, got rid of testing when we needed it, not getting the masks out, not getting the tests out. Go, go, go. But I fear that the Charlie Baker who started off slow, had a few brief shining moments, haven't we all, has gone back to the Charlie Baker we've seen throughout this pandemic at the worst possible time.
What about
I give Charlie Baker an A-. He's tried to strike a balance between business and public health. I think an appropriate balance. The only minus I give him is because of the testing that Marianne mentioned. There is not enough home testing. There's not enough public testing. It costs too much for people. So you're right on that.
The president's done.
He started off strong, but he too has gotten his lagged recently. And I think he has to bring in the Defense Production Act and other things to really ramp everything up.
All right, Biden pulled the gentleman's C here, okay? I mean, just wearing a mask in photo ops is not a COVID policy. This is a guy who just over a year ago said he was going to snuff out COVID when he became president. He's done anything but. He has failed a lot more on testing than Charlie Baker by not getting tests out against the country, across the country. He could have used the Defense Production Act. And Kamala Harris came out and said, we didn't know the variants were coming. We didn't know the variants were coming.
Unlike your people have been lying to your voters and saying, don't get a vaccine, you don't have to do it. Finally, everyone in your party is figuring out you're killing off your own voters, number one. Number two, Biden got more people vaccinated than anybody has in the world, period, full stop. Number three, if you're giving Charlie Baker an A-, how can you give Biden a C? If that's not great inflation, I can't believe it.
Okay, if we want to go numbers, I don't blame Biden for this, but if you want to look at the numbers, deaths under Biden are greater than deaths under Trump.
Oh, hold on.
Despite vaccines being available.
Okay, we're at over 800,000 people dead.
Yeah.
And he's been in office 1 year. And that's with your governors around the country lying about how many people had cases, lying about deaths.
So Republican governors are to blame, not the president?
DeSantis, Abbott, all of them. So let's just be fair here. Okay.
Boston had 3 mayors, so I'm not going to go through what Boston's mayors did in 2021. So let's move on to Massachusetts. Once again, sending an army of folks to Washington, D.C. with a new Democrat as president. And we're talking from Marty Walsh to Rachel Rollins. We're talking about Claire Corona and Vicki Kennedy. The corridor between Boston and D.C. is busy. Marianne, does it really benefit the state?
There's always a Massachusetts connection.
Right.
And for those people who do serve, there's always a way to help Massachusetts. Most of them want to do that, do that. Everyone's one phone call away, whether it's business, help in other matters, doing things for Massachusetts, because most of them end up back here. They always help out.
Rob?
Listen, you forgot one name, Mitt Romney. He got there by way of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Utah.
Right.
But he made it there one way or another, right? Hey, listen, we have a tradition. It's fun to watch. Some are helpful to our state. Some it doesn't matter. They're just off having a good time in an ambassadorial, nice location like Ireland or Trinidad and Tobago.
Lord.
Both parties.
We have a lot of people that try to get into the White House from Massachusetts, but so far, at least not since JFK, has that worked. The results of the 2022 midterm elections will determine Biden's success in the second half of his term. Who from Massachusetts has the muscle to be a major player in this battle, do you think, Rob?
Well, Catherine Clark has the muscles. She could be the next House Speaker. The problem is that Democrats are likely going to lose the majority, so she may be the next House Minority Leader. Democratic retirements are rampant. 22 Democrats in the House have announced their retirement, only 11 Republicans. You throw on top of that traditional midterm political trends where the party in power loses seats, usually a couple dozen seats, and Joe Biden's popularity only being at 40%. She's a lot more likely to be the minority leader.
Right now, they're not giving the Democrats very much good chances of winning the 2022 elections.
But everyone said that about Georgia in the 2 Senate races when we won both, okay? Rob's right. Catherine Clark is central to this because she helped bring back the Democrats into power in 2018, and she elected and recruited a ton of members, number one. The other one is Elizabeth Warren, who not only ran for president, but she's got a lot of her political people at the DNC. And I think you're going to see her out there trying to help keep the Senate, too. Both of them could do both of that the Democrats can keep the House and the Senate.
Okay, quick look at Beacon Hill. The doors are still shut, but the lobbyists, they still have the access. Any predictions on, or hope, I should say, if things will change, Rob?
I mean, is this going to be the last building in America to open to the public? I mean, it seems that way, unfortunately. I mean, it's a puzzle, but they get 100,000 visitors a year versus millions of visitors at the Museum of Science or Museum of Fine Arts, and they can be open, but the State House can't. Give me a break.
Marianne?
Yeah, at least they have an excuse now with Omicron. I mean, when Mariano was here a few weeks ago, he couldn't give us an explanation as to why the House wasn't open, and it seems like he might be protecting a handful of Republicans who aren't vaccinated. So that brief shining light on the hill, not so much.
Could be Democrats too. They won't give us the names. They should give the names.
Come on, you know that.